Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right. Well, we get to talk about death tonight. How cool is that? We're here at the meditation on the stages of the path, and we've had the rare and precious life and 8 worldly concerns, and recognizing just how incredibly rare it is to have an opportunity to have access to path of liberation, the guidebook essentially to no more suffering, to engage in this life in ways that are skillful, resilient, and understand the true causes of happiness, true causes of suffering. Incredibly rare. And we have been exploring how we get caught up in these 8 worldly concerns and how they can just dominate our mind. And we can absolutely forget that our happiness and well-being has to do much more with how we engage with the world, not what's happening. How do we utilize it? How do we extract the essence of it? And how do we grow from it? And also understand it's very subjective. The attitude when I'm bringing my attention to something, it's going to have an impact on how I experience it. And that we're all seeing this world through our own subjective lens based on our conditioning, our karma, our places. And as that shifts, my experience of the world shifts. And these dynamics are playing out, and we actually have a chance now to be a participant in that process instead of just being blown around like a little leaf in the wind. We actually get to be engaged in this process and be a part of who we become and how we experience things. Incredibly rare, very few have the conditions ripen as we have. So we've been exploring this. And so in these meditations on the path, the rare and precious life, impermanence is one of the key points. And that's where we're at today. And how important it is to understand this very impermanent nature of this opportunity that we currently have. So before I go any further, just want to double check the sound. Can you all hear me out there? Okay. All right. Okay. Awesome. Let's take a look at the text. Actually, I want to go back to the quote. All right. Death and impermanence. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Wealth created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of the Bodhisattva. So here we have this straightforward truth that very few people ever want to look at. This body will come and go. Friends will come and go. Everything that we've worked for and earned will be left behind. And yet we spend a lot of time trying to build up that which we will leave behind. We spend a lot of time trying to create conditions to be permanent that aren't permanent. We put a lot of energy into trying to cultivate a life that will actually not be with us. And with the 8 worldly concerns, we can see how much it drives our stress, our worry, our fear, our anxiety. And one of the biggest struggles is that we try to make things permanent that aren't permanent, including us, including our thoughts, including our feelings. Got news for you. That aging cream, not going to keep you from aging. Just going to tell you. I don't care about the sales pitch. So often people get uncomfortable about this, and yet, today we'll probably explore why it's so important to and how liberating it is actually to live in reality. It was Lama Allen uh, talked about how it's kind of neurotic to be nervous about the inevitable. We're all gonna die. It's the deal. We'll have a terminal illness. It's called life. And wouldn't it be nice to not fear living? That's the freedom when we recognize the nature of reality, is that when the body comes and goes, whether you believe in the next life or not, it's going to happen, the body part. And then at the time of death, what's going to matter? It's how you lived your life. What are we waiting for? How can we make each day that we show up a good day to die, if this is it? What's our life about? What's meaningful? And how much of our life do we really participate in a lot of things that are totally irrelevant at the time of death? And how much stress does that put into our hearts and our minds? So one of the key points around understanding impermanence and death is to make living a priority. Living in a way that's meaningful, that's productive, that extracts the essence of this life. This day comes, this day goes, and how much of it was I a participant in the treasure of this life, the merit, the wisdom? What's really important. So if we don't think too much about death, we keep planning and worrying about the next 20 years or put off things. And how much are we missing each opportunity that we have? And the thing is, if I recognize that death is certain, time of death uncertain, and at the time of death, what will matter? That's the three main points. Maybe I can get to what's really important, what will matter. And let's do that today, so I don't miss the opportunity while I have it. So as it was put here back in the verse, let me pop that back up. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. So all of you know that we teach in a format here to try to meet all of humanity. We really want to try to be in accordance with His Holiness, hopes and aspirations that we can use Dharma in ways that are meaningful and productive for all people and face religions and humanity and wherever they meet. So we want to teach from all perspectives, which you might be a human being interested in Dharma, utilizing these teachings that help you have a good life, and you have just this one life, and you want to live it in a way that's meaningful, that reduces suffering, cultivates well-being. One motivation. Another motivation, which will be addressed here in the book quite relevantly, is you might be someone who does believe in rebirth, next life, and you may have heard that how we live this life is going to create the next one. Which case, it's pretty important what I'm doing right now. And that's also applicable to Christians, right? If you live well, you go to heaven. You don't live well, you go to hell, right? And yet very few people in Christian are really thinking about what they're doing to go to heaven. What's the old saying? The one I really like a lot. Yeah, here it is. Everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go today. And so wouldn't it be nice if you knew you lived your life and the next life is going to be a good one? Why would I cling to this? So Christian, someone in reincarnation, or just, someone who's uncertain might want to hedge your bet. Make sure that I live life. And then we have the next motivation, which is to use this life to be liberated, to become an arhat, to be liberated, to know nirvana. And so right now the opportunity is ripe. The lessons are here, the teachers are here, the practice is here, liberation's available. We don't want to waste too much time clinging to this life when we can be using it to be free of samsara. And then the motivation of the bodhisattva, to use this life to reduce the suffering of all beings, to use this life to cultivate and recognize your ultimate nature, your Buddha nature, your primordial wisdom that's already here, and to be free, but in a way that empowers you to help all beings. So these are these four motivations. And as we look at death and this very precious life, they're just as applicable in all four. If I'm just a human being, just a materialist, got a body, got born, my consciousness is an emergent property of the mind, body. What's going to matter at the time of death is how I live my life. If I'm going to die without regret, I'm going to want to feel good about how I used the life that I had when I only get one. If I'm concerned about the next life, what's going to matter is how I live my life. And what will give me peace at the time of death is that I lived it ethically, with loving kindness, compassion, and created conditions to continue a path in a good way. If I'm seeking nirvana, how I live my life is very relevant, and what will give guidance to that transition is knowing that I've laid this foundation to continue a path. And likewise with bodhisattva. So the urgency here is what's relevant. Consciousness, the guest will leave the guest house of the body. At that moment, what's always going to matter is how we live our life and what's really important to us. And that's the main reason to understand impermanence, is that we can be impermanent at any time. Might not be here tomorrow. Friends might not be here tomorrow. There's a lot of people we know who aren't here anymore. Some are young, some are old, some slowly, some quickly, some suddenly. And with that awareness, two things can happen. One is I can be very comfortable with death. I can know that if I live today well, nothing to worry about. And if I know that it could come at any time, I might be more focused on how to use this day that comes only once in ways that are really meaningful before I go. So a lot of value in that. And to not take for granted this day. It comes only once and they're limited supply. And on the other side of that, we don't want to be all stressed out about it. Like, oh my God. Oh, I only have today. It's going to go. Oh my God, what if that's good? Yeah, death. Oh, I had this to do. I didn't purify. I didn't do these practices. And, now we're neurotic about death in a whole different way. And that's not helpful. The point is, you're already okay. You've already done a lot of work to live a meaningful life. And the key here is to engage with the life that we have, the wisdom we have while we have it. And not fear death. What I like to say is there's no time to waste and no reason to hurry. No reason to hurry. Time unfolds, We use what we have as best we can and know that we're in a process. So that's my little intro. Maybe we'll actually get to the teaching tonight. Could happen. Let's take a little peek. Meditating on the precious human life opens our mind to a unique, constructive way of looking at our life and arouses interest in using it for spiritual practice. For those who wish to practice path to enlightenment, Lamrim texts divide this path into 3 sections, known as the 3 levels or scopes: initial, intermediate, and advanced. So I outlined 4, because I always include just a human being, which I think a lot of people show up to Dharma as a human being who doesn't know about these initial, intermediate, and advanced. And so I've already explained this initial level of the Lamrim, which begins with meditation on death. This topic many people don't like to hear or think about, even though it's something that we'll all have to face one day. So the Buddhist approach to death is realistic and practical. We're advised to think about death during our life every day. In fact, to prepare ourselves for it and be able to die with a positive, peaceful state of mind, rather than a mind overwhelmed by fear or other disturbing emotions. Accepting the reality of death does not make us morbid. On the contrary, it instills a sublime sense of preciousness for each day and moment of our life, and the wish to live it fully with compassion and wisdom. That's the goal here. Meditating on death in the context of the Lamrim involves contemplating that we will definitely die at some point. So death is certain. That we have no way of knowing when, time of death uncertain, and that the most helpful thing at that time of death, so their reference is dharma, our spiritual practice. This is mainly because death is followed by rebirth, and the circumstances and experiences of our next life depend on how we live and die in this one. Since we naturally want happiness, not suffering, we need to learn how to create the causes of good experiences and avoid the causes of problems and misery. So just backtracking here, the most helpful thing at that time is dharma, our spiritual practice. So remember, when we're talking about dharma, we're also talking about that which protects us from suffering. We're talking about engaging in reality. And spiritual practice is really nothing other than our relationship with reality, our interdependence with this experience, the way things are, the way they operate, and a clarity around the lack of independence that we have. Matter of fact, I think the opposite of spirituality is an independent self. And all spiritual traditions emphasize this understanding that we're much more than this independent self. And our connection with interdependence, and you can be a materialist human being and still understand that you're very interdependent. There's nothing independent about you. And it's that understanding that is what we really free us from so much of our afflictions. So dharma practice, that which protects us from suffering, that which helps us engage in reality. And at the time of death, that's going to be important, no matter what your view is. And if we can practice that, recognize every day as a treasure that comes only once, real gift, then we'll be a little more hopefully inspired to live it well, cultivating the qualities of mind that are meaningful and beneficial, whether you believe in a next life or not. And always remember that in these Lamrim texts, Tibetans and Asian cultures in India, even non-Buddhist, of course there's rebirth. It's the water you're born in. That's natural. It's culture. Everybody knows it. It's the way it is. Westerners, not so sure. Especially even Christians. Yeah, I kind of believe in heaven. Still might cheat this guy and do that other thing, but I can go to confession, and so there's still a tenuous there, but there's a real grasping to an independent sense of self. So we explore meeting ourselves where we're at. So this text then, coming from this culture where rebirth's just a natural thing, then what's most important is what's going to the next life. I mean, that's the bank account you need to care about, not the money that's going to be left behind. And if we look at how we perceive the world we live in now, karmically, how I perceive the world, the life I get to live, as I change my karma, I change my whole experience. And so what am I doing karmically? What are the habits and tendencies I'm creating in my heart and mind that give me the life I get to live in a meaningful way, or inhibit me, imprison me? And understanding this dynamic that all happiness and good comes from virtue, all suffering from non-virtue. We can see that dynamic in real time, in this life, in this body, objectively. When you spend your time cultivating compassion, loving kindness, when you engage in virtue, do you feel better about who you are or not? When you do things you don't feel good about, do you feel good about who you are? No. The things I do a lot, do I have a propensity to do them more? Do I engage in certain activities and they become habits, and then those habits are very hard to break? You're just talking about karma, cause and effect. I keep creating causes that create habits, and those habits become tendencies, and then those tendencies become the way I live my life. And I have habitual mental habits and patterns. I have habitual labels that I put on people, and I don't even know I'm doing it. It's just so habitual. And so those types of habits and patterns going into the next opportunity of life, well, they'll be there with us. So what are we doing with this life? The real treasure is cultivating the seeds and habits of freedom, of liberation, of virtue, of loving kindness, compassion. And I want to be mindful of the time and want to get to some of these aspects. So this chapter includes 3 meditations. The first is on the disadvantages of not being aware of death and the benefits of being aware of it. Contemplating these can help us overcome any resistance we might have to death as a taboo topic. That is followed by the 9-point meditation on death, divided into 3 parts. Finally, there's a meditation on subtle impermanence, the ever-changing nature of things. So my great aspiration is that we get to, at minimum, the disadvantages of not meditating on death. And so again, for those of you who might be joining new, is analytical meditation in Tibetan Buddhism is taking some time and deeply analyzing these points of thought, and not just accepting them, just analyzing them. Are they true, not true? Piercing through and challenging them, and seeing if we can get some actual realization from that. Is it true? Is it not true? If it's true, does it hold up to reasoning? What about this? And And then out of that, we get some sense of realization or confidence in a point. And then the idea is that I would meditate and hold that point. So the three wisdoms: wisdom of hearing and teaching, wisdom of analyzing and teaching, and then the wisdom of meditation on that teaching, on that realization. So what we're doing here is we're going through just the analytical piece, and then throughout the week, inviting you to engage with these again and again, and see if you get some benefit from it or not. So let's take a peek at these disadvantages of not meditating. Being aware of death means not denying it or pretending that we'll live forever. Instead, we accept that our life will definitely end and remain aware of that fact as much as possible. Lamrim mentions 6 disadvantages of not making a conscious effort to accept and remain aware of death, and 6 benefits or advantages. So all of you out there keeping score, there's 6 and 6. And then for the 9-point meditation, there's 3 points and 3 subpoints, because we really love our list and our numbering system. So let's get with the 6 disadvantages. Okay. So if we don't think about this, if we don't take time, we'll not remember the Dharma. Again, Dharma being our spiritual practice, what's meaningful, what's important, what frees us from suffering, what protects us from suffering, engaging in reality, our practices and realizations. Won't remember it. All of our time and energy will be spent trying to achieve only the goals of this life, such as wealth, fame, power, and so on. So if we're not really thinking about this, we'll be much more susceptible to the 8 worldly concerns: gain and loss, pain, pleasure, praise, criticism, good reputation, bad reputation. All those will just dominate our lives. Our lives will be full of worldly activities, and we'll be decorating our prison cells, samsara. But maybe I'll get a recliner with heated seats and very nice positions. Nice. And a lumbar support. Yeah. So we'll spend a lot of time decorating samsara. And then death will come, and then, whoop, I missed this opportunity. So even if I remember the Dharma, we'll not practice it due to procrastination. We'll think about practicing Dharma later in our life when we're less busy. Our life may end before that time comes. I mean, not that any of you procrastinate, but, I've been known to. I have a great example of it today, actually. I'm going to give this presentation at the end of March for this conference. And they sent me this form that fills out. You're supposed to fill out the topic, the description, the things they need for the accreditations, certain questions. They sent to me, and they said, it says you need by, don't need it right away this week. So this morning, I'm thinking, I haven't filled that out. I probably need it. I have it on my list. I put it on a to-do list even. I even said, I'm going to fill those out. It's going to be one of the things I'm going to do today. But, I didn't do it. So I get a letter, an email from them just before the teaching tonight. Hey, do you have those forms? We need to get them in right away. Now I have a deadline. And pretty immediately I filled out all the other stuff, and then I wrote her back and said, I'll have those 2 forms to you first thing in the morning. And I'm pretty sure I'll have them to her if I don't die, to her first thing in the morning. Now I'm motivated. I'm highly motivated, right? And so, I don't know if maybe you can relate to what deadlines do, but they're kind of motivating. And so, same thing with our Dharma practice, right? And we can get caught up in 8 worldly concerns. Well, I'm going to do this later, or a lot of people even will. I'm going to do that retreat next year. like it's going to be there next year. Yeah. And I have teachers who aren't here anymore. And one of the primary current ones, he doesn't offer retreats anymore. Those things are gone. Used to go every year. And so, we take things for granted. Oh, this is on once a month, or that's on this day, or, I'll catch that next week. And, but we don't know if we'll be here for it. So pretty easy to put that stuff off. And remember, Dharma practice isn't simply attending a teaching or meditation or that formal practice. Dharma is right here, right now. How am I engaging with the person in front of me? Am I understanding this interdependence? Am I engaging with this person in a way that is virtuous and wise, skillful? All that can really go out the window in our day. So we're not realizing this day could be our last. Our priorities tend to get out of whack and easy to procrastinate. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I got that email just before this teaching. Okay, don't have time for that. Even if we practice Dharma, we will not practice it purely. Without awareness of death, our practice may be polluted by the eight worldly concerns, such as hoping to receive material gain, recognition, or praise. Yeah, that's some sneaky stuff, right? Spiritual materialism. I got the cool mala, got the nice shrine. Looks pretty cool. It's nice. Looks pretty good back here. And here's the empowerments I went to. I'll tell you about that. I met the Dalai Lama. Yeah. And we're not really practicing Dharma. We have nice, rich conversations about Dharma. And there's lots of, I remember early on in my little path here, became a monk, and I thought, how can I be helpful? And I got on one of those, they're like news forums. It was like topics in a group forums that you could be on way back when. And so there'd be a topic, somebody asked a question, and there's this Buddhist one, and so people, and I thought, well, maybe I can offer, some guidance. People have a question, so I joined this forum. And all I saw was people arguing with each other about what Dharma was and what it meant, and those people are wrong, and this is that. No, that quote's not right. And it was really shocking, that people spend all day talking about, who's right or wrong and what Dharma, and it was, so I didn't, I got out of the group. And the 7-point mind training, Dharma should be in our heart, not in our mouths. And so we can also do this. I know when I was a monk, we have lots of commitments, and I still have commitments and so forth. In Bodhisattva, in the past, you have things or commitments and past prayers that we do every day. And one of the things that we would do is a tea ceremony every day. A tea ceremony is this ritual that we would do every day. And it's inviting all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the protector deities. Really rich thing to remove obstacles in our way and be a benefit to others. Somebody is ill, we'd have prayers for them. We do it every day. And it's this beautiful ceremony. We have these nice ritual items and a teapot that pours and it overflows. This is radiant nectar, and we bring all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas present. And we're traveling, we're in a van, we don't always have, all that. You can't always do it. But the monks are going to do it no matter what. So that ceremony gets reduced to opening a Coca-Cola, pouring it into a thing while we're traveling in a van and everybody's chanting the prayers. And what that shows is important, you know. It's not about the ritual items. It's about the ritual. It's about the intention. And holding that and making it valuable. You're not going to miss a day. So those types of things, where that level of priority is important, and it's not the outer uh, form, but what's really mattering is how we're practicing. So we can kind of just quickly do my practice, then go out and do a whole bunch of worldly concerns. But I did my practice, except what's that? An hour in the morning and 16 hours of mayhem. I'm gonna be spiritual for about an hour. Then I'm gonna be caught up in mayhem all day. And then in the evening, I'm going to say, well, any good I did, let's dedicate it. And let me try to purify all the mayhem. I'll do a little practice. But, that's what we're doing all day long. What are we planting? So if I don't meditate on death, pretty easy to get involved in 16 hours of mayhem. Kind of unraveling everything else I'm doing. If we don't focus on death, our practice will lack persistence. We may give up if things get tough, or we don't like the results we expected. I'm going to even tap into that a different way. So we get complacent. Wow, I found the dharma. I found the path. This is great. Oh my, this is wonderful. The teachings are here. Everything makes sense. 3 solid months of practice. I'm studying. I got my books. I got my book here. I got my fancy wrapped up book. It's right here. I take good care of it. Ooh, yeah. Wonder what's in this. Uh, and I'm all into it. And then, 3 months go by. Life's pretty good. I've been doing practice, and then skip a meditation, skip a thing. And as the old saying goes, you can only coast downhill. And then, well, I found this. Well, put it in this. I'm going to go explore that. And then we slip away. And then something terrible happens, and we get very interested again. Yeah, I'm not going to name the teacher, but a teacher of mine had a student. He talked about a student, and he had a really devout student. Like, this guy was going after it. He was doing retreat. He was in long-term meditation months at a time. Practitioner. Dharma's most important thing in his life. He'd gone through a divorce. He had lost everything. He was, this reinvigorated him. His life came together. Got some, deep practice, long-term practice, healthy and well and balanced, really clear. And yeah, one of his best students. And then he got good, got a girlfriend, got in a relationship. It wasn't so important anymore. And worldly life took over. And so that's the other tricky part, isn't just I don't get the results I want. I mean, some of these results take time, but sometimes we do get the results and they're pretty good. And I'm more on maintenance, than growth. And so complacency really sets in if we forget that we could die today. So that's a tricky business. I think I see more often. Do you see the people that, do want immediate results? So, but I think, more relevant. We do get some results, then we get kind of okay. I'm a lot more willing to do hard work when I'm suffering. We may commit many non-virtuous actions. Such actions will bring suffering both now and in the future. And that yeah, if we think we have all this time, it's pretty easy to not be as mindful and engaged in virtue in a way that's truly meaningful. And I'll purify that. I'll take care of that later. Or yeah, was it? We got Here and Now Center, right? You guys here somewhere? Okay, I see a lot of windows. So Dusty's story. I'm gonna. You were talking. I think it was Nepal where you met uh, these Buddhists who are, pretty happy, pretty carefree, drinking that Chang, drinking that beer, doing stuff. And you're asking, wow, Buddhist, and shouldn't your behavior be a little different? They're, that's next life. It's next life. So I'm sure I didn't capture it wholly, but that story, you sit around and yeah. So there's also kind of a downside to thinking you have a next life. Because they might be missing the point. That next life may not be nearly what you have now if you're not taking good care of this. And so tricky business there as well. We can let things slip. And then, and here's like the key one I think we can all relate to no matter where we're at on this path. We may die with regrets. At the time of our death, we may have many things to regret, things we wish we hadn't done, and things we should have done but did not. And this is where I think a good motivation for life period whatsoever is, how would you like to die without regret? I'm recalling somewhere in these teachings of one of the great yogis who had that as a motivation. I want to die without regret. And that will fit all four motivations. What would it be like to just, when it's time to go, you've lived it well. There's nothing to regret, no matter what happens next. You're good to go. And ultimately, I think that is a key point of all of this. I'd like to die without regret. I'd like to know that the world's maybe a little better spot because I was in it, that I made good use of life that I had while I had it. And what I did in my life, I felt good about, and it was meaningful. And how many opportunities do we let slip by to have done something, that was good, That's why I called my daughter last night. Well, Laura's not home. I'm here. Yeah, I call my daughter. Why we do that? Maybe I'll call my other one tonight. We'll see. But what's important, right? What's important. So I'm going to pause there because I think that's a bit to toss out and see what comments, thoughts, questions, curiosities you may have. You all have been pretty quiet tonight. Mostly, you usually interrupt me mid-sentence on most things. But I guess talk about death suddenly, don't have much to say.
Yeah, be brave.
Okay.
And I don't really know. It's something that I don't, since I was a little kid, I've thought about death a lot. And uh, it's kind of like the next adventure. I don't remember where I read that, who said that. It certainly isn't my quote, but it resonated with me when I read it. Um, I don't want to say this and sound, I always think about my mom with this because she'll be 87 and she's very healthy. She's so scared of dying. She's so scared. And she doesn't like thinking about it. Um, she lives in a retirement home where people are sick and dying pretty frequently. So she is around it, or at least knows of it. And she often talks to me about just, well, complaining about how everybody's dying around her, almost like she's surprised. And I so wish that she had a little more wisdom about it's just of course you're going to die. But she has so many regrets and spites and anger and blah blah blah. And so uh, I get triggered, but then I try to get past that and be supportive of her, for her. But I guess that's my question. I don't know how. Sometimes I don't know what words I can use besides just sitting and being there, which is really hard, when she goes into that very fearful, kind of neurotic mode that she can so easily get into.
It's challenging. And I do think you and Laura need to talk probably on a daily basis. Um,
Right?
yeah. Uh, but one of the things, when I think about regret, right, and fear, and in these later parts of life, are there conversations that you can just bring up the good times, the things that have been well? Uh, how good you and your brother's life is, and mom, just reminding or having conversations about the good things that have happened and how her kids, turned out pretty good. And I think those are at least entry points. Uh, Ultimately, as some of you know, when my mom died, we got to tell her that it's okay to go, Mom. We're okay. You did well. We're okay. And that's what she worried about. And so, at least, with regret, it's, I didn't do this. I should have done that. I could have done, and all that. Can there be some conversation in the mind while she's still lucid and clear around what she has accomplished, what has been good? And, you know, whether or not it alleviates all that fear, at least is not thinking about the should haves and the would haves and the regret. And just filling the mind with a little bit more of the good. But, at least that's something.
Thank you. Yeah, that helps. It's I forget that that is something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Bring that to
definitely.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, the softness. Thank you. I'm gonna try that next time.
If it works, let me know. I'll try it.
You got it.
Okay, good. All right. Chris.
Yeah, yeah. My father I think, John, you may know the story. My father was kind of the other end. He was a devout atheist his whole life, believed that consciousness originated out of the body, and he was a physicist too. So, you know, laws of thermodynamics and entropy, and that, things are going to go to randomness. And so he was able to actually participate in a physician assisted death. And he wrote this great poem about, it's been a good ride, and the ride's ending. And, I think he had thought about death. And so he didn't have regrets. And he was able to put on his Google Calendar, he was able to put D-Day. And that was the day he got to choose when he was going to die, and very much pragmatic about it. I think, I just think this is really important because we live in such a sanitized environment where, we don't see dead bodies. They get whisked away. One of the things that I always find kind of ironic is that, if you are, maybe if you live in a Buddhist country and you don't fear death because you live in, believe in reincarnation, but we live in a Christian country and people are terrified of death and resist it. And seems like if you're, living a virtuous life, then it'd be like, let's live a virtuous life and then get on to, 40 Vestal Virgins or whatever, whatever your belief system is. But yeah, I think it's really important to kind of embrace this. And yeah, I really think about, what am I going to be thinking about on my deathbed, and I think that's, some people don't like to think about that, but I find it to be pretty helpful. Anyway, thanks for this teaching. Good stuff. And yeah, rites of passage is our parents should die before we do, and we have to figure out how to manage that. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, and what a great example your dad is of, just that. We can just be a materialist in that view and have a good life. And that's that. And die comfortably. Roxana.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. A long time, there's a man named Ken Wilber who has written a variety of books. One is called Grace and Grit. And he met a woman from Aspen and they got married, and about, I don't know, a month or two after they got married, they found out that she had cancer. And they went all over the world and they were tried all kinds of alternative treatments and did meditations. They just, the book is all about all, excuse me, all the various things that they did. But 5 years later, she did end up dying, and there were just a few people with her when she died. And after that happened, they went into another room, and then when they came back, she was smiling. She had a smile on her face. I just love that. And I know when my father was dying, he had 6 heart attacks over a 12-year period. And my brother had worked at the Pritikin Clinic in California, trying, nutritious ways to avoid heart attacks, etc. And we were at their place in North Carolina, which doesn't exist anymore after that hurricane. But I decided that my father was of that quote unquote greatest generation. He lived through the Depression. He was in the military for 23 years, served in the Civil War, and the World War II, and
Civil War, it's pretty old. Yeah.
yeah, really. One of my ancestors did serve in the Civil War and got wounded twice. But anyway, I made the decision that I was not going to try and change my father, because he smoked his whole life. He drank scotch his whole life, and he didn't want to give that up. His favorite salad dressing was like a half a cup of mayonnaise. He was not, in other words, his culture and his life were going to kill him. And he cut back on stuff, but it was still going to kill him. So I decided that I would stop trying to keep him alive and change him, and I would just love him till he died. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, because we got to talk, we hugged each other, he cried every now and then, and we just really bonded. And then about a year later, he died of a stroke. But my brother was really mad at me because I had changed. But it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I'm so grateful that I had that time with him, with just to love him and relax about it and let it go. So anyway, that's it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So what struck me from our conversations and this opportunity that we have to kind of bring it full circle is if we spend our life now getting comfortable with death, when that comes, as our parents, some of them faced it with fear, some of them gracefully. So many people really wind up in fear and wind up with that anxiety. And if we can work with it now, then there can be a lot of peace, a lot of joy, and maybe we'll have that smile on our face at the end there. And just have that comfort of knowing how we have lived and what's meaningful. And so the distinction here is, have I recognized that this day could be my last and choose to live it well? Or have I fallen into the trap of saying, I can't wait for this day to be over? Yeah, that's the other comment we make. Man, today's been a long day. Oh, that's probably good. Huh? And each day being this incredible gift that we get to extract some treasure from, the treasure of merit and wisdom. And that everything that's happening, as we talked about in the retreat on Sunday, literally everything that's happening is happening just for you to cultivate these qualities within while you can. That's a pretty nice opportunity, if I remember it.
I think one of the other sayings, John, is I've got time to kill.
Right, got time to kill. Thank you. Yeah, I got some time to kill. All right. So my encouragement is to spend some time this week really reflecting on impermanence and death. That, as you wake up in the morning, recognizing how do we want to live today while we have it? Knowing it could be our last. As the indigenous people say of our continent, can we make today a good day to die? Means we showed up well. which, by the way, means no self-criticism. I might die today. I screwed this up. Yeah, no. Self-compassion. That we are just learn how to do this thing as best we can. And let's just engage in the lessons of life and be the best we can. Engage in virtue as best we can. All right. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have cultivated from our time together, those of you who care to. We've been doing a lot of things on Wednesday night. We have come together to support each other in cultivating our hearts and minds, compassion, with loving kindness, with wisdom, and this path of liberation so that we can be of benefit to others. Great deal of merit there. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all beings and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may recognize our Buddha nature and be of greatest benefit to all. Let us dedicate. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om